Enough is enough. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So we'll start with, I think, the heart prayer. Da, 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 da. All right, let's start with the heart sutra. Wow, Shukila. Good afternoon. How have you been? And haven't seen that yet. So what's the latest?
Clivia plants is the latest.
Which one?
Clivia. Very expensive to buy the plants, but you've got it in your garden.
Clivia sounds like a dirty word.
Only to you. It's ego, isn't it? Yeah, ego is dirty.
Clivia plants. Okay. Whatever. All right. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. And here at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on the massive Vajra's mountain in Rajgir, together with a great community of monks and a great community of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Thence, for the power of the Buddha and the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? The Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Putra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should learn like this correctly and repeatedly beholding those five. Also as in him. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors to consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are empty, without characteristics, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stains, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element in soul, up to including there's no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attachment, and also no Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and dwell on the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear, having completely passed beyond error to reach the end point of nirvana. Also, who dwelling in 3 times also manifested, completely awakened to the unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment and reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of the great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, found perfection of wisdom like that. Then on the rose from that concentration, commending the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara saying, well said, son of lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, and Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, thus surrounding in their entirety along with words of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Chandan Soki Chananda, Chanchu Badi, Dani Kamsanchi, Dagi Chushi, Betson Nangi, Dola Pinchi Sange Dopas. You can search Dagi Chushi, Betson Nangi, Dola Pinchi Sange Dopas. Chandan Soki Chanamla, Chanchu Badi, Dani Kamsanchi, Dagi Chushi, Betson Nangi, Dola Pinchi Sange Dopas. It's okay. In the morning session, I think that I did I put the dedication prayers on the screen, so I thought maybe I did it again. All right. So, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, just a second. I'm just going to add Jason to the recording list. There you go, Jason. So let's begin with Jane's question. It is that we have to be so specific when confessing our negativities, like specific intention, time, place, object, because of the four results of karma: ripening, causal, concordant, habituation, experiential, environment, result, being also very specific.
That was in relation to we discussing that in the discussion.
All right. So you said that you were discussing that. So did you reach a conclusion in the discussion group?
Yes.
It was yes. I think that, yeah, preferably yes. I think that if we have the ability to remember negative actions that we've done before, then we have a better ability to feel regret for them. If we leave it just in a general sense, sometimes it's harder to relate to them. So I think that when we confess the negativities, we want to feel genuine remorse. But we also want to confess the negativities and purify them, not in a way that is limited only to the things that we can remember, because there are obviously many negative actions that we cannot remember. So in that sense, we can say, well, let's begin with, I think that we can think of the ones that we can remember. So done in specific time in relation to specific objects and so forth. Then we extrapolate on that. You know, those are the things I can remember. So I've done those things before in the past, but not only with respect to these particular objects. Like, for example, if we remember harming other living beings, then you can remember that specific situations where you were cruel to one specific person or a group of persons, or when you were harming animals and so forth. And then you can think that likewise in the past, there were other beings that I was cruel to in ways similar to that, or even worse to that. And in different situations, different times and so forth. So you can also include that in your purification. So it's more like a thing that it creates those hooks, right? If we just keep it in general, like confess all my negative actions done before, sometimes it's hard to really feel genuinely sorry or regretful about it. So what we can remember, we use that as examples of things that we've done in the past. This is sometimes the way that I try to think about it. Have you got anything to? Cool. So let's look at a couple of more downfalls. All right, so we looked at the 14th one yesterday, and also at that note, which is connected with actually the first downfall, praising oneself and belittling others. So let's look at the 15th and the 16th. The 15th says, even though you have not perceptually realized emptiness, you teach someone emptiness, saying, meditate on this and you will perceptually realize emptiness and become like me. And he or she understands that. It is a root downfall of making false proclamations. The way that it is found in the Guru Puja is proclaiming false realizations of voidness. So that's an interesting one. I think that it's interesting because it's very specific. You know, it seems that it's very specific to emptiness. So first off, we have in the lay vow, but also in our vow of ordination, one of the four roots is lying about one's own spiritual attainment. It's called kind of lying about one's own superhuman abilities, you know, great abilities of a human being. So normally the way that it is explained is that if you claim that you have attained karma abiding, for example, where you haven't, and you use that in order to deceive others, this is where you transgress that rule. This is where you create either a defeat in relation to your vow, or that which is similar to defeat in relation to your vow, or I guess that in relation to the lay vow, it would be maybe a downfall. That language is not really used, I think, in relation to the lay vow, but no, we don't say defeat or similar to defeat in relation to the lay vow, but you will be breaking it or violating it. The same thing also is said with respect to claiming, for example, that you have realized emptiness. So that's in general, but here it's more specific, it seems. It is specific to a realization of emptiness. But not only that, it is specific to a perceptual realization of emptiness, which brings out some doubts in my mind. I mean, I don't know, I cannot really solve them, but what if, for example, you haven't realized it at all? Not even, I mean, let alone perceptually. You haven't realized it conceptually, and you pretend that you have, that you've totally nailed it. It's not that you think that you got it. It's not that you believe that you got it. You know that you haven't realized it, but you still preach it to others in a way that you make them think that you have. Does it break your root downfall?
Yes.
Even if it's conceptually? Yeah, so some people here say they think so, definitely. I just want to look again at the wordings. It says, if even though you have not perceptually realized emptiness, which means that you haven't got a direct realization of emptiness, you teach someone emptiness, saying, meditate on this and you will perceptually realize emptiness and become like me. Now, what if you say, meditate on that and you can conceptually realize emptiness like me? No, it's like a downgraded.
Yeah.
It seems I would be affiliated with that, right? No, I think that probably, here it's stated in a very specific way. You haven't realized emptiness perceptually, but you pretend that you have. If you pretend that you have, you know that you haven't. You pretend that you have and you say, just follow me, it's going to be all right. You'll come to realize it like me. Then you'll come to realize emptiness just like me.
Not about emptiness, but the Dalai Lama used an example one time when we were in Darwin about, he was basically saying somebody who, or at least those of us in the front row had consensus that we thought we knew who he was talking about by the description, had, realized Shanta. So one of those people, one of his students relayed it back to him and he didn't say a word. They reported that he didn't say a word. It's that sort of thing we're used to, even though it may be that that person has that realization, because if you don't have that realization, how would you know? But when it comes from the Dalai, you can be pretty sure that someone just knows. Yeah, so generally, this is why we don't generally hear from our lamas any sort of realization story, generally.
Yeah.
Just, it seems to be safeguarding you, or maybe modeling the behavior we need to follow.
I think that this is what it's nice when you still keep in touch with the origins of our Buddhist tradition, in a sense that we're, for most of us here, we're new to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. You know, we might have been around for quite a few years, for a few decades even, and yet in some sense, because we're not Tibetans, we do not know the culture, or we don't really feel comfortable sometimes with some aspect of the culture, we're still on the fringe, on the edge. But then when you look at how over the centuries the Buddhist tradition have developed in Tibet, they have their checks and balances that protect others from being deceived. One of them is the taboo that was created around speaking about one's own spiritual attainment. So it's not necessarily that you'll have to educate someone in a particular way in Tibetan culture or Tibetan tradition, Tibetan society. It's more like those are the things that you learn right from your early days of Buddhism. You don't speak about your meditation. You don't speak about your realizations. You don't speak about your qualities and so forth. So this is a system of checks and balances, you can say, that we, in some sense, don't have. Not only we don't have, it's actually, sometimes I see with people that attain, they attend teachings, they might attend a talk on the philosophical view of emptiness or dependent arising, and we used to nodding our head and kind of saying that, I got it, I understand it, I get it. And in the Tibetan tradition, it's like you never find people that do that. Almost, never find people that do that. It's not really acceptable to do it. So even though sometimes we don't feel comfortable with kind of adopting all codes within Buddhist tradition, this is a good one to adopt, kind of being humble about your spiritual attainment. If you have one, if you don't have one, it's actually, you don't have to disclose them to others. You can keep it personally to you, and it protects others from being deceived, in a sense that if it becomes acceptable for us to speak about our personal progress, then other people would be susceptible to deception from some fake lamas or fake gurus, or people that pursue their own goods, because it would become an acceptable thing to do. So we protect others in some sense when we keep our own attainment or our own progress personal to ourselves. It's not that you have to be totally religious about it. Of course, we have a community. We have a community of people here. You can say Dhamma brothers and sisters. So we speak about our meditations with them, about our practices with them. It's all right to do it. And also, if you have a certain particular thing that you've experienced in your meditation, I think that sometimes it's okay to share it with others. But I think that as a general rule, it's best to keep it private to yourself rather than promoting it to others. Kerry is saying that I think it's still a downfall, as saying with pride and negativity. Well, I think that kind of downfall needs to be very specific with respect to the vow that you have. So if you have an afflictive state of mind, like for example pride, and you're motivated by pride, it is likely that the action that you take is a negative action, but it's not necessarily constituted downfall. Kind of with the downfall, you have to be, I think, more specific with what rules do you break in relation to the vow that you have. So that's 15th, I think. That was the 15th. Let's look at the next one, 16th. I'll put it on the screen. So if you accept the property of the three jewels, or the provisions and necessities of the Sangha and the fully ordained, actually, before we go to that, just one more thing with respect to the 15th one. It says that you incur that rude downfall if the person understands that, which means that they don't have to believe you. It doesn't say that if they believe what you say, you have created that rude downfall. If they just understand what you say, even if they don't believe what you say, you've created that downfall. And it's also the case with, I think, when you look at the 10 parts of action in Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation, when he speaks about lying, he doesn't say that you incur a full path of action once someone believes you. It's just about if they understand what you say. So you have that wish to misrepresent reality. You're conveying it in a particular way, either in the way that you speak, or it could be just in your body language. If the person understands what you've said, regardless of whether they believe it or not, if they understand what you said, then you're incurring that, or you're committing that action of lying. Of course, there are other things that need to be in place, the motivation, the concluding part, but it's enough for them to understand what you say for it to become a lie. Also here. Anyway, let's look at the 16th. If you accept the property of the three jewels, or the provisions and necessities of the Sangha and the fully ordained, that have been confiscated by kings, ministers, and so forth as punishment, when you obtain these goods, it is a rude downfall of accepting the property of the three jewels. So I think there are a few scenarios here that could occur. I mean, to begin with, it is unlikely to think of our situation here as accepting things that were confiscated by kings and ministers and so forth. I mean, we have to be flexible in order to think of how will it apply to me in my situation. I think that, sorry? Yeah. So if you accept the property of the three jewels, or the provisions and necessities of the Sangha, and the fully ordained that have been confiscated by kings, ministers, and so forth as punishment. When you obtain these goods, it is a rude downfall of accepting the property of the three jewels. So we can come up with scenarios that would maybe suit our situation without speaking of kings, ministers, and so forth. I mean, this, again, it requires us to imagine a situation, because I think that it is very unlikely that something like that will happen to us. But suppose that the government confiscates the possession of a center because they have done something that is unlawful. So they confiscate offerings, statues, and so forth, and they give it to us. It belonged to another center. They confiscate it and they give it to us. Sounds like you could be incurring that rude downfall if you accept it. I mean, again, it's like unlikely to happen to us, but in some sense, you have to be flexible in thinking that, to begin with, how could this scenario play out for me?
Well, just as we read out, accepting gifts of what has been seized from the true gem, just that itself, that is more possible to happen.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking of two instances. One where the center was robbed, right? Yeah. And items that were taken. Mind you, we went down, I didn't personally, but other people from the center went to the local markets to see if they were being popped at the local markets. Didn't find anything. But that could be, or having been in the situation where our robes and altar items were robbed out of the vehicle. And so receiving things like that, mind you, we'd have to have the Bodhisattva balance. And I presume, would it be knowingly that you know that? Because, they just, well, I don't know if they got any money from our robes, actually. Probably not.
We know one of the first.
Scenarios.
One of the first things I discovered after ordination is the lack of pockets in your robes. It's like there's only the thing that the pocket that you have here, and it's so uncomfortable to. There's no pocket places. There's no wallet places. Anyway, so I agree with that. That's as close as I can. That's another scenario that can play out. So, something that was stolen from a center, but when you accept it, you have to know that it was taken from the center. Now, suppose that someone gives you a statue. You have no idea that it was stolen from a center. They give it to you as a present and you accept it. Without knowing that it was stolen, it's not a rude downfall. You have to know that it was either confiscated from the center, from a Sangha member, and knowingly you accept that. It's I think that I read Thupten Chodron's commentary, and she speaks about, for example, that there was this period in Tibet where, in Tibetan history, during the Cultural Revolution, where the monasteries were completely ransacked, and many of the statues and so forth were sold in the markets of Hong Kong or Southeast Asia. So you know that this is stolen property. If you have the Bodhisattva vow and you buy those statues thinking that I can get them now for cheap, it's an ancient thing. I want to obtain it. If you have the Bodhisattva vow, you would be incurring that downfall. Of course, you can think of other scenarios. What about, for example, you want to buy off those items and so that later on you can offer it back to the center or back to the monastery and so forth. I don't know, you can still have that motivation. It's kind of coming up with sort of like a Hollywood screenplay. We don't have to go to those kind of stories. If you buy something that you know that is stolen, or you receive something that you know that is stolen and think that I can get it for cheap, I really want it, bang, rude downfall. What about, for example, again, that great vajra that was cast into a river? Yeah.
That must have come from statues somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, kind of people come up here and give us different things. I think that often it happens that they want to clear the cupboards or the altar or the house and so forth. They got the new stuff. They don't have place for the Vajra statues or whatever. So they come up to the center and give it. I think that in that case, we don't really know what's the history of those objects, and also we have no reason to suspect that they're stolen. You know, we also can be reasonable about it. Why would you think from the very beginning that this is a stolen particle? So if you accept it, I don't think that there is a problem in saying that, in taking that. Another thing is that this is a point that I think that it happened to some of us before. So you go to India and then people ask you to take stuff to India, to take offering to this and that and this. I'm totally totally unorganized with all of those different things. You know, people sometimes ask me, can you take $50 and give it to that person? Can you take this money and make light offering at Bulgaya and so forth? You know, you get these chores and you cannot say no to them. But then you end up with money and you forget what people ask you to do. Now, Doma, for example, Doma, the English nun, gave me $400 just 3 months ago to give to Geshe Jamang in Tibet. And I was talking to her the other day and she said, oh, you know, now you cannot go, so what are you going to do about it? I totally forgot that you gave me $400. I totally forgot about it. So, you know, if you keep it to yourself, knowingly, you're definitely incurring the root downfall. If you forget about it, you're becoming reckless with the possessions of others. You know, either way, it's not a good thing. It's way worse to incur a root downfall, but you know, those are the things that we have to be careful about. It can be a pain sometimes, but particularly when people ask you to kind of find this really obscure person, you know, you kind of,
in 100,000 people, you've got to find this person.
Yeah, and you're on a limited time. It's like, yeah, I always kind of have my inner eyes rolling when people ask me to do that kind of stuff. All right. Kerry is saying, I'd meant a downfall to say about realizations is with pride, so a downfall. If a Sangha member gives a gift that is no longer wanted by them, or the center is that okay? Yeah, if it's there to give, it's okay. It's like a thing that we get a lot of food offering here from time to time, not all the time, but sometimes people, one person come or a group of people come, like it's common with Vietnamese, for example. They very devout. They would go really big with making food offerings, but sometimes it's way too much for us to eat. Not only that, then you're starting to go to like, I'm a gluten-free, I'm dairy-free, I'm sugar-free, and so forth. So, you have all those different stipulations made in place, which means that at the end, quite a lot of those things cannot be used. So in that case, it's okay to pass them to another person. It's better to pass it to another person than for those things to go bad. But if you think that, for example, if offerings are made to the community in general, but then you think that I'm going to use it personally for me, you become a bit kind of too greedy about it, and you think that, well, it was made for the Sangha and therefore I can have all of it. I think that that's verging, like taking things that were not given to you. Another thing that's interesting that Thupten Chodron says in her commentary was that suppose that someone gave you a packet of biscuits to put on the altar, and you think, I'm really hungry and I'm going to have a biscuit, and later on I will buy a new packet of biscuits and put it on the altar. I would do something like that, in a sense that it's not a good. I thought that I would have done it, but then reading what she said, thought that, yeah, actually that's not okay as well. Yeah, I mean,
it's the mind.
Yeah.
Training. It's the mind testing you.
Well, I have to be honest. I have to be honest. Before reading kind of what she said, I thought myself, yeah, I can have a biscuit now. I'll buy a new packet of biscuits. I'll just make offerings on the altar. It's a win-win situation. It's not
but
a win-win situation.
you were substituting Monte Carlo. She gave you Monte Carlo chocolate biscuits, and you substituted ice for Ovos. That's a big downfall.
Yeah.
That's part of Perry's, the downfall about to say about realization with pride. So that's really a downfall in relation to the first one.
Yeah.
So it's again making it a downfall. The precise which one it's specifically a downfall in relation.
Yeah. So I'll get to that in a second, but. I mean, this point that Tooten Children was making, no, it's okay. This point that Tooten Children was making is that, if someone gives you a packet of biscuits to put on the altar, then it's not there because they've given it away, but it's also not yours because it was not given to you. So even though you think that I'm going to replace it later on, basically it was not given to you, it was dedicated to something else. So stop with the biscuits.
I think this happens with our offering. People give offerings, and then somebody says, "They gave it for this. Can I use it for that?" And I go, "No." And he looks at me like, "Not again." At least he asked, right?
Yeah. I mean, kind of, you can think that there's a lot of gray area, but at the end, you want to be totally, sometimes you want to be extra careful, even though you might be on the safe side of things. Sometimes it's good to be
on the safe side.
Even more on the safe side. So the first part of Carrie's comment is she meant a downfall to say about realizations is with pride, so as a downfall. It's like praising oneself and belittling others. That's done with pride. And here it's done, you can say that it is involved with pride, but also with an additional attitude of wanting to deceive others, right? So you know that you haven't realized it, but with a deceptive attitude, you think that, yeah, I've nailed it perceptually. Do what I did, and you will also come to do that. Sorry?
I said you could be deluded enough to be.
Yeah. Well, everyone, I mean, particularly living in a place like that, every once in a while you come across people that think that they are Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, people that think that they've realized emptiness. And I think that, they genuinely think that they are or they have realized it. I mean, what can you say? If they honestly believe that they are, they wouldn't be incurring a rude downfall, but they'll probably have to treat that. What can I say? This is one of the, yesterday we spoke about how you can be skillful in dealing with others. Those are this is one of my black spots, my blind spots, sorry. I don't know what to do in those situations when someone claims that they're realized or that they're Buddha. It's like, I become totally dumbfounded. I have no comment.
You would look blank because they say in the other cases they're not to. So somebody comes up and says that I'm just going to turn and walk away. It's like,
you can ask me start asking specifics.
I don't even know enough to know what to ask them. I just would look blank and walk away because it's like you just wouldn't expect to hear that.
You could say, "So do you ever get angry? Frustrated if people don't like conversation."
Carrie has a question. Carrie?
Sorry. When it comes to the gift thing, there was two separate occasions that makes me a little bit confused sometimes. Like one occasion when one of the old Gompa managers was clearing out a lot of stuff and offering like things like vases and stuff that the centre didn't want anymore. And there was a couple of things that I accepted and I was a bit hesitant, but I did. And then there was another time when I was overseas and I offered a blanket to a Sangha member who gave it back to me because she couldn't fit it in her suitcase. And I was like, oh, am I taking something? So both times I'm a bit questionable, but then you're also supposed to take what people offer you as well. So,
well, if you receive something from someone that has the authority to give it, which means that if it's a person who fulfills a certain role, so if they're a Gompa manager, this is within the boundaries of their role, So, that they haven't stolen it from a center. You know that they can give it. If you receive it, there is no problem. Likewise, you give someone a present, a blanket. it is not yours anymore because you've given it away. The other person has it. They have complete power to decide what they do with their possessions. If you give them a blanket, the blanket is their possession. If they decide to give it back to you, it's totally okay to take it because it's there to give. No,
Oh, that's good. I feel guilty when I look at the blanket in the vase sometimes and going, was that okay? So thank you. Yeah.
No worries.
I was just thinking of an example, and I appreciate it's not the same situation as you, Kerry, but last time Namasoko was here at the airport, I made an offering to Venerable Roger, and at first he wasn't going to accept it. Then he accepted it because you accept offerings, and then he offered it back. So it was sort of like accepting and offering back. So it sounds like that Sangha member had accepted it, but then offered it back.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
All right, let's make sure that, so those are the two root downfalls that we've covered today. Let's make sure that we're also following Geshe-la's presentation. So what I thought of mentioning today with respect to the 4 powers, let's look at the outline. Sorry? It's small, isn't it?
Yes.
No, sorry. That's
Okay.
that.
All right. So we spoke yesterday about the power of applying the antidote at all times. You know, and I think that one of the points that I came up with and we discussed that was how here it seems that the emphasis is you have to generate the antidote in your mind stream. That's what Shantideva is saying. And to generate the antidote in your mind stream, you need to think of karma and you need to think about death and impermanence. This is his take on the power of the antidote. Whereas normally what we hear, and also what Lama Tsongkhapa says in his Lamrim Chemo, is that, okay, the power of the antidote is reciting mantras, building statues, meditating on emptiness, meditating on bodhicitta, and so forth. So in combining these two explanations together, since that what Shantideva is saying is that you have to generate an antidote in your mind. This is a thorough application of the antidote. And Lama Tsongkhapa and our teachers are being more specific. Like, these are the antidotes that you generate in your mind. So this is what I think we've said yesterday. Now, continuing with that, so looking at just the power of applying the antidote at all times, there's the reason it is reasonable to make effort, and the reasonable of making effort quickly. And again, here we think of death and impermanence and how you don't want to die without having purified your negativities, because if you do that, then you're bound to experience great suffering in future lifetimes. So you should do it quickly. So within that, let's look at how verse 59, the last verse in the power of thorough application of the antidote, is connected with the next power, which is the power of turning away from faults. So it says it is unsuitable to be lazy in meditating on the path because there is no reason to be unafraid of suffering. So to be meditating on the path means that you generate an antidote in your mind stream. So it is unsuitable to be lazy in creating the antidotes in your mind stream. Who will offer me freedom from danger? How can anybody say, I shall liberate you? If I'm definite to vanish, how can I remain with a happy mind? So there is no reason to be unafraid of suffering. And then that is the last verse in the section of thorough application of the antidote. And the next one is the power of reversing into the fault, of not reversing into the fault again. It's quite a clunky way of saying that. The power of turning away from faults, the power of turning away from negativities, which is also called the power of restraint. So how does it work? Before we look at what Shantideva says, the way that it is normally explained is that you think about your negative actions, you understand the gravity of negative actions, and you feel a sense of regret for them. And commensurate with the power of regret, you will become determined not to commit that action again in the future. You think that henceforth, I will not do it again. That is a general explanation of the power of restraint, or the power of turning away from faults. I shall not do it again. So, so then, again, Shantideva presents it in a way that is broader. I wouldn't say different, but it gives us a broader context, which is connected with verse 59. So let's look at, first of all, the outline in order to see the broader context. So in 59, it says that there's no reason to be without fear. So you shouldn't be lazy, because if death will come upon you quickly, you will experience suffering because of your negativities. So then you want to turn away from negativities. So how do you turn away from negativities? First of all, deal with, it seems that in this presentation, you refrain from negativities, the power of turning away from wrongdoings. You refrain from negativities from this day onwards by regretting the negativities. And you do that through purifying pointless negativities. And again, you think of death and impermanence, and making effort day and night in the methods of being liberated from negativities. So you think of death and impermanence, you think that there's no point in being attached to my possessions. There's no point in being attached to my relatives, because you can say that upon death, they will become non-existent, or they will not stop to be the things that belong to me. But also in my life, you can say that with my friends and relatives, this changed positions. So, they become people that I like, people that I dislike, people that I'm close to, people that I have problems with. So they're unreliable. So it seems like what Shantideva is saying here is that if you want to turn away from your faults, from negativities, first of all, deal with your attachment. This is what you need to address. So before you make that promise, henceforth, I shall not do that action again. First of all, get your attachment in check. Are you still attached to your possessions? Are you still attached to your friends and relatives? This is only one example of how you, first of all, deal with your afflictive states of mind, because we have other negative actions that are done under the power of anger, under the power of jealousy, under the power of pride, under the power of concealment, and other negative actions, right? So it seems like what Shantideva says here, first of all, look at your, attachment, but also we can also add to that other afflictive states of mind and reduce the power, the efficacy of those afflictive states of mind. So he says in his commentary, let's see. Of past experiences which have ceased, what has remained of them? By grasping at them, I transgress the advice of the teacher. So you start to think of negative actions that you've done on account of your affliction, such as attachment. None of those things that you're attached to is reliable. Why be still attached to them and then transgress the instructions that you get from your teachers and the Buddha? And also, it is unsuitable to be attached to friends and so forth. If in a similar fashion to this life, if I have to give up friends and relatives and I have to go alone, how suitable are all friends and non-friends? Looking again at the outline. So purifying pointless negativities, it seems that the first couple of points actually are about reducing our afflictive states of mind, such as attachment. That's the first step in turning away from negativities. First of all, reduce your afflictions. Then make effort day and night in the methods for being liberated from negativities. Again, looking at verse 62. From non-virtue arises suffering. How does one become free from that, you say? It is it is suitable that I contemplate this alone day and night. So here kind of Shantideva says that on one hand you reduce the power of your afflictions, but on top of that you start thinking, if negative actions bring about such great suffering in future lifetimes, how do I overcome that state? So it seems like what it indicates is at least the wish to overcome your afflictions and negativities. So you become determined day and night to do something about your situation. This is, you can say, the next step in turning away from foes, becoming determined to do something about it. So it's actually quite nice. It seems that Shantideva is taking us along a process by which we not just say, I'm not going to do it again, right? It's like if you think of the normal confession session that you see in a movie, then you go to see a priest and you say, I've did that and that, I'm sorry. And the priest gives you a punishment and you say, I shall not do it ever again in the future. And that's it, the sin is finished. Maybe I watched too many movies, but anyway, here it seems that it's done in a more extensive way. Shantideva is leading us through a process. It says that if you have regret and you don't want to do those things again, first of all, reduce your afflictive states of mind through looking, like attachment, through looking at how it is not suitable to be attached to those things. Then, again, think of, you need to develop the wish to stop engaging with those negativities. So work on the wish, develop the wish not to do it again. It says here, it's not only a wish, it's more like a resolve not to do it again. So from non-virtue arises suffering. How does one become free from that, you say? It is suitable that I contemplate this alone day and night. So you think about it and your wish to avoid that increases. And then when you wish to avoid that increases, then you take the next step. You actually disclose all those negative things. We haven't got into that yet, but I thought that it would be good to just bring it up. Today we're going to cover it later on with Geshe-la. The next point is confessing negativities performed in the past. So in verse 63 and 64, we again call those beings in front of us, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Gurus, and so forth. And we say, hey, I've done those things before, but I don't want to do them again in the future. Let's see, just briefly look at, oh, I haven't gone live. Okay, anyway, I'm recording it. No, I'm recording it, it's okay. So then let's look at how it is done. So confessing what one did before. I, out of unknowing ignorance, have created natural non-virtuous actions and accepted negativities. Any of this that I've done in the next verse, before the eyes of the protectors, with hands folded and a mind seeing the fears of suffering, I prostrate again and again and confess all of them. So it's actually quite nice to think about it in such an extensive way. It's not just saying that I will not do it again. You actually, if you think of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the teachers and so forth, being in a space in front of you, and in their presence, you are willingly acknowledging all the negative things that you have done before and thinking that actually I cannot hide. They see me. There is no way that I can hide the embarrassing things I've done before, and particularly when we think of the lay vow or ordination vow, there are things that we do, and even when other people do not see what we do, we know for ourselves that we have done something that have transgressed the vow. And also that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas see that. So you're laying all of that bare. Now, sometimes I say we lay down those negativities in the sense that we completely disclose them. This is part of the process of purification. So we are admitting them openly. And only after that, we generate the wish, we generate the resolve not to do it again, in that we commit not to do it again. We're going to cover it tomorrow with Geshe-la. I just kind of thought of preempting that because it fits with that explanation of today. So then you make a promise to refrain from the negativity after having requested attention. Then here you finally make that commitment not to do it again. So I request the guides to accept my negativities as mistaken. Since they are not wholesome, I shall not do them again. Also, you say it's not just a process of like turning away from negativities. There is much more in it. Reducing our afflictions, developing the wish, the genuine wish to put a stop to the causes of suffering, then disclosing all the negative actions that we've done before, and then making a promise not to do them again. All of this, Shantideva explains as the power of turning away from faults or from negative actions. I've lost sound. Anyone else? I still talk, so I haven't lost my voice. So Donna is saying that, not me. So, any questions?
I don't want to make a question, but Yeshua went through it. I mean, it's upcoming. It was a preview.
Mm.
But when he went through the general confession prayer.
Yeah.
So that seems to again arise.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah, it fits well with the general confession prayer. Yeah. That formula. Kind of you confess everything. Kind of you call upon all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, protectors, teachers, and so forth. All of them, and it's spent in front of you. And it's sometimes when I think of just kind of silly things that I've done in relation to my vow, kind of does. And I think of how sometimes I would be totally embarrassed if I have to disclose that in public. But this is the type of attitude that we should have. It's like, I've done it and I'm going to fully disclose it. It's interesting in a practice of Sojong. I think that the idea is that you come clean. You do disclose your negativities. A friend of mine said once that, the way it is done now, then you have, if you get to and you confess you need to say something in the presence of gelongs, then you go and say something like blah, 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 and you hope that they don't understand what you say so that you'll avoid the embarrassment of people understanding what you say. Anyway.
It's that whole adage too, though, that, if you do, even though by hanging on to not disclosing it completely, it's actually really unhealthy and sits there, just festers. Whereas if you do, it feels so much better, even though it's really wrong. It's always better to be able to, you know yourself and feel better.
It's not, I totally agree with that. Kind of if you come clean and you confess it wholeheartedly, you don't have to hold on to it. But I think that there is another aspect to it, in that, as I said, kind of, when I think of having to confess some things in public and being embarrassed about it, then, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas see that anyway. So why would you be embarrassed about it? But also, we should adopt the mental attitude that sees that teachers as Buddhas. If they are Buddhas, they also know what we've done. So again, it doesn't make sense to be embarrassed about it. So, and think of if it would be so difficult for you to disclose it openly, and you do it at the end, the difficulty, that emotional difficulty of disclosing it, would be also a safeguard in the future. If you think that I don't want to go through that emotionally charged process again, where I find it really difficult to disclose what I did. So it's much easier to refrain from that negativity. That embarrassment is actually a good thing. That emotional difficulty in disclosing it is a good thing. You can use it as something that helps you to avoid negative actions in the future. I mean, think about shaming. You don't want to be shamed, so don't do it. Not that shaming is a good thing.
You speak to the Lama one-to-one.
And the sojong is a formula.
Yeah, in Sojong, it's not one-to-one, it's a formula. But I think that probably in a monastic community, I mean, I don't know, but I suppose that there were some actions that you went to, the Lama of the house or the locality, and you've disclosed them or confessed them even before Sojong, or
Sometimes it just may arise in a situation.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that also,
actually, I was responsible for that.
I think that also it happens to us just in the practical level. I mean, we don't have here the prerequisites for forming a Sojong. So sometimes when we have those rare opportunities to meet our teachers, like for example, you see Lama Zopa Rinpoche or you see someone else, I guess that some of us are using those opportunities to come clean about things that we have done or things that we don't feel right about, that we feel a bit raw. So you can do it during Sojong, but I think that sometimes doing a Sojong is great, because if you can do Sojong, if you can do summer retreat and the rituals at the end of the summer retreat, then that's a sign of a fully functioning monastic community. Yeah, we're working towards that. We're saying prayers towards that. However, I have a few howevers. No, it's like sometimes I think that it's quite interesting. We want to be there's the summer retreat, and it was done according to the rationale behind that was to prevent monastics from going out of the monastery when the monsoon was on, when everything around was teeming with life, and there was a great danger of stepping over ants and insects and so forth. So in some sense, you can say that if we do the summer retreat in a way that the Buddha laid it out, we were doing it here when it's winter.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's like we do it, but it's actually, it doesn't really, the purpose is not exactly like the purpose that the Buddha had in mind when he created those rules. Changing those rules doesn't also seem like the right thing to do. Like, who are we to actually change the dates all the time for the summer retreat? So, it's like...
But we go by the Indian
Yeah. And then the other thing is that, it's like, I want to be part of a fully qualified monastic community. But then when you think that, wait a minute, I won't be able to go down to Brisbane and hang out with friends, or I won't be able to go down to the plaza to have coffee with another friend. This is where attachment comes in between.
A friend of mine shared her experience about, she stays in something,
Yeah.
So every time I'm in Sojong, she said that a group of the nuns would just head towards His Holiness office or his temple.
Yeah.
Because it's a very wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And I really want to experience that in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah, I had, when... Yeah. I had a few opportunities to do a Sojong when I was in India. It is a great experience. Hopefully we'll be able to do it in the future. But why do you do that? So if we form a Sojong, then you do the confession by reciting a certain formula, reciting a certain text. Then different things that happen during Sojong. But it's not that you actually get to have a one-on-one session with someone and you break down all the different things that you've done since your last Sojong. So in your mind, you should actually be thinking of all the different ways that you have violated or transgressed your vow, and then disclose it like that using a certain formula. But I think that if you have actually this situation, if you have an opportunity to disclose it in front of your teacher, your ordination master, and you're not being too overbearing about it, in the sense that also they're busy, they don't have a lot of time to just sit and listen to all our shortcomings. You can do it brief. If you have those situations, I think that this is where your sense of pride is being challenged, and this is where it helps you to think that I don't want to go through that process again of disclosing all the wrong things that I did to my Lama. So I'll try better to avoid it in the future. All right, let's leave it here for now. Gewadi Nudu Bienjugame Doa Chikamalupa De Salagopa Sho Chanchu Sencho Rinpo Make Panan Kegilchi Kepanyam Pame Paya Gone Gondu Tawa Sho Kowe Shinkandi Bendan De Wa Malu Jumwen Shenre Siwan Tenzing Gatoi Shape Site Badu Tengyu Chi Jan Shin Jan Gun Gawe Ten Zing Kyo Mewe Kun So Du O Se Cho Sung Ko We Le Mo Tu Du Pa Da So Du Ji Gon Du Sha Te Shu. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Carlton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carson and Jokey.
Thank you.
Thanks, Venerable Karsten.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.